Welcome back to the Lofty Lenders Homebuyer Education, where we explore tips, tricks, and stories that can help you plan for your next home purchase. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, a move-up buyer, an investor, or just looking to learn, we hope you gain a little bit of knowledge today. Today's topic is all about, should you buy a fixer-upper home? Charlie, do you think I should go out and just buy one without doing any research? Or I guess, what do you think is the best way to go about this?
I mean, I like going to the casino too. You just roll the dice and you never know what you're going to get. I wouldn't tell your wife. I'd just go do it and make it a surprise.
That sounds like a great idea. You know my wife. She would love that.
Yeah, as would mine.
Of course, we're talking tongue in cheek here today. A fixer-upper does come with a lot of challenges and can also come with a lot of rewards. So today we'd like to discuss some of those, especially because homes with TLC, they can seem like a smart way to save money and build equity, but at the same time, they kind of come with those challenges. And we're going to break down the pros, the cons, and some financing options to kind of go over that with you. So, first off, Charlie, what do we qualify or consider a home being as a fixer-upper?
And it's funny, 20 minutes ago, I just hung up with this exact conversation. So I think I tell people that, you can have ugly and you can have not in great shape. It can be partially broken, but it's functioning.
Why are you talking about me like this?
None of us are perfect.
Okay.
Other than this shirt. I love the shirt.
Okay.
But you can live in a lot. And I think a lot of us have pretty high standards for what we'd like. The HGTV shows are fun, but they're not realistic. People can have a safe home. They just didn't decorate the way you wanted. That could be a fixer-upper. Or you could have it towards grandma's house, and it really has a lot of things to be desired.
Yep. Yeah, and so many people think of a fixer-upper as that $100,000 house that is just falling apart, windows are falling off, and it needs a ton of work. And I'm really handy, Charlie, so I'll be fine. I'll be able to fix it. Just give me the money. I'll go out and figure it out. Don't worry about it. I work in IT, but I can totally be handy to fix it up. I know we have these conversations all the time. What do you say to people when they say that?
We deal with a lot of emotion. And so you and I can speak of this. It's not our house. So we are very factual and want to see people be safe and sound and have a very, very nice reserve and backup plan, not just for the house projects, but for your personal relationships, your marriage, your family. But most of us want to overcommit. We get the grandiose plans because we've seen those fix-it shows, or we've seen friends go from A to Z, but we didn't see all the stuff in the middle, and it didn't seem that bad. But I would tell you that you really need to have that good check, or have someone who's willing to give you those double checks, because you can get in too deep too quick, both on time, effort, knowledge, and money. So you need good partners that are going to be honest with you and honestly scare you up front. Like, if we can scare you right away and stress you out, it's going to stop that stress down the road.
And I think one thing I talk to people a lot about is a contractor once told me there's three things that come with his line of work. You got time, you got quality, and you got cost. And you can have two, but you can't have three. If you're going to have something that doesn't take too much time and it's of really good quality, it's not going to be low cost. It's going to be expensive, right? Or if you want something low cost and good quality, it's going to take a lot of time to do that. If the other way around, all three options, if you think about them, they all work out where you can have two, but you can't have three. It's really difficult to do. And a lot of people come into this thinking I can have all three because this is my first purchase. I've got plenty of time. I'm not married. I've got no kids. I can just, spend all my time working on the house. But maybe you don't have the money, or if you do have the money, then how are you getting it? Because I need a job that I don't have to show up to, or I get paid lots of money, because that sounds great.
Well, and we've even had contractors who want to build their own house, which had one last year, and their 24 was terrible on income. Now, they got their house done, but they made almost no money because they did their own house and they're not paying themselves. So then you have a problem every year thereafter for their business and how they want to finance future projects. But on the personal side, you hit the nail on the head. You may be able to do all these things, and if you don't have kids, you don't have a family, totally got the time, more so than otherwise. But you still have to have the right tools, and you have to be able to have the time at the right time. So you may want to do the project, and work says you can't have this month off. So there's always just those dynamics, or weather. You can't control everything. You got to have a backup plan.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons of buying a fixer-upper. So first off, a couple of the pros, I already mentioned them, but lower purchase price compared to those move-in ready homes. Of course, the potential to build equity quickly with those right renovations. And this kind of goes back to what Charlie mentioned before of it doesn't have to be a house that's $100,000 that is in a neighborhood that can go to a $300,000 or $400,000 house. This could simply be I just finished the basement in an area that, a lot of the homes are already finished. And I just took the value of this home up to the standard in the community.
Right. Some things can be very simple, and you and I've talked a lot with the whole insurance debacle and roofs making insurance be expensive. A roof could be a fixer-upper. Some buyers can't afford to do that roof, just like some sellers can't. That's why they're not doing it before they sell, because they don't have money. But if it's not leaking, it's just money. So let's get the roof replaced. And if you buy that house because others won't, you might get a better deal on it. And it's not a huge jump in equity, but you probably got a better deal because there was fewer buyers that were able to spend the money on that roof.
Yep, and a couple other fixer or pros, and you just hit one of them right there on the head. That there's less competition since many buyers kind of shy away from those homes because most people are not willing to take on that project. Or, you're buying a fixer upper, you're buying a property that's dilapidated. There's only so much you can usually see with that house. There's so many things that you got to get in there and start tearing apart the walls to find out what's under there. And oftentimes I have buyers tell me, well, we thought we were going to do this one simple fix of making this a bigger bedroom, and this turned into a multiple bedroom, multiple month project because we found mold or we found something else going on.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. To where, again, we're going to scare you early, because if you're going to do one project, and I live in an old house in an old neighborhood, I love them, but you also don't want to not budget enough. You have that extra because you're going to open up a wall. Like you said, you're not going to know what you find. It might be a surprise, it might not. But if there's a additional project that's only a couple $1,000s more, or even 5 or 10,000 to add it on, you might want to do that right away, because if you don't, and then you got to do it by itself, it might be 15 or 20 by itself. So sometimes it's wiser just to bite the bullet, get it all done, make a mess once, spend the bills once. It's probably cheaper on a lot of those to pair them up than it is to do one chunk and then another one later where you're overlapping.
And I think especially because a lot of us say we don't mind living in a construction zone, but after you've lived in a construction zone for a while, if you're not a contractor, it starts to get old fairly fast. My wife really doesn't like doing dishes in the sink, so remodeling the kitchen once is more than enough, right?
I mean, we did dishes in the bathtub. We didn't have a kitchen. That's no fun.
Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, in the bathtub. Yep.
Yeah.
Another pro is the ability to customize the home to your tastes and needs, obviously, and that's really the biggest thing I think most people think of when they're buying a fixer-upper is I can make this what I want. But on the flip side, I think there are several cons, and we've hit on a few of these already, but the renovation costs that can go beyond the budget. So we always talk to people about when you're buying a property, you should have a contingency plan built in. Most loans require at least a 10% contingency, but oftentimes 10% is not enough. I got a $60,000 renovation I'm doing, and $6,000 is my contingency. $6,000 isn't enough to cover much of anything these days.
No, and really that type of contingency is materials went up, labor went up. Small surprise. It's not designed for an oops. Like it's really designed for slight changes in an estimate or a timeline. It's not. Oh, we did not know that was behind that wall.
Right. Also, there can be longer timelines before you can fully enjoy that home. So you buy this property to move into it, and you're not able to move in for a while, or you do move in, but like I said, you're living in that construction zone. Another con is the stress of managing contractors, permits, unexpected repairs, along with permits, just the city and their expectations on the inspections that they're doing. Some cities handle that differently. Some counties, just different areas, are going to hold things against you more aggressively
Right.
than others.
You don't want to assume what the rules are. In Des Moines, they try to make sure that stuff is safe and sound and not a problem in the future because I've had things in the past that were too loosey goosey. So it's a great idea, but if they come in and you've done the work and they say tear it out, do it again, that's scary. So some of this is making sure you don't assume what's right. You got to make sure that way you have fewer surprises, but we still need to budget for that surprise because nobody's perfect and there's always changes.
Yep, I think the final con I've got listed on here so far is just the financing challenges, especially if a home's in poor condition. A lot of people come to us and say, "Well, I got no money and I want to buy a first-time home buyer house, but I want to buy a fixer-upper." And oftentimes, those renovation type loans, they're looking for some money down. And they're typically requiring you to have some sort of a history of doing this kind of stuff, and that's it's not necessarily what we see with first time buyers that walk in and say, "I'll buy a house that's really dilapidated," and when they are really dilapidated, the lender is usually going to say, "Well, the house isn't livable. You got a hole in the floor of the house, or you don't have a you have holes in the roof." Like there's certain things that have to be there, and financing can get pretty loose in some cases, but there's still a point in which there's some collateral there that they're giving you money for, and they want to make sure that they're going to get their money back.
Right. Anything that is not done is a risk. And everything in lending is all about risk. The lender just wants paid. And so they want the property to be in reasonable shape so someone doesn't walk away and throw their hands up saying, it's not what I bargained for. So going in with too rosy of glasses and thinking you can do all the projects, get it, all at half price on sale, it's just not a fair expectation. And that's not fun because you do want to get done. You want to enjoy the house. You want to have what the vision was, or at least close. There's a lot of things that you don't know until you get into it, and that's where we can help. Make sure you get a good contractor, not just Joe Blow who can say he can do the project for $50, and he actually causes a $400 or $500 problem versus fixing your problem.
Yeah. All right, so story time now. So I've got one, Charlie. I'm sure you've got one here in a minute as well. But I had a gentleman who was renovating his property, and he was using a specific loan type, and it was for renovations. And so he owned his house already, and he was looking to put a bunch of money into this thing. And the financing requirements state that it has to be completed by the general contractor. The homeowner themselves, in this case, was not able to touch anything, and it all needed to be done through the specific steps outlined by the loan. And this, as I talked about before, when you want quality and you want something to not cost too much, then it takes time. And that's what he was looking for, was those contractors that were going to do a good job, but just take a little bit longer. But the process was just taking so long that at some point he just said, "You know what? I'm tired of waiting. I'm going to start doing some of this stuff." He started working on it. The lender found out. The lender pulled the financing and said, "We're not going to do anything if you're not following the rules that we've laid out for you, because this is the only way we're willing to do this loan." And so he jumped in, started doing the work, and really put himself in an unfortunate situation, and it was terrible. And fortunately, we were able to get him over to another lender that was able to do something similar, but it ended up just not being what he had hoped for in the beginning. And I think that's one of those kind of scary situations that you put yourself in when you're going through this, is especially, I think his was VA. So anything with the VA always takes time. Every veteran can tell you that.
Yep.
It just does. And so knowing that you're going to take extra amount of time to get this done because the VA has their timelines to turn stuff around was just really unfortunate. And I felt terrible when we got to that point. He just realized he was kind of out of luck by doing it. So,
And the rules are there for a reason. I mean, it stinks sometimes. We think everybody's being too picky on the compliance or the underwriting side, but those rules are there, so those programs don't go away. Because if they lose money and things go bad, one, the borrower ends up being in a bad position, the lender's in a bad position, the neighborhood's in a bad position, and then like in that case, VA, they're losing money, so therefore the program may not sustain itself if they do too many like that. So it's a double-edged sword. You want to have the availability, but if you look back in the day, loans were harder to get because they weren't as high loan to values. You needed large down payments. And most of the time in the old days, you had, not that long ago, you paid for everything. You couldn't access your home equity. We have way more access in the last 15, 20 years to home equity and unsecured loans than we've ever had, but that's not always a good thing.
And Charlie, I know you've got a separate story of a gentleman that I'm specifically thinking of that worked on his own house in his spare time between when he was at home versus when he was at work. And it took a little bit longer. I think he was looking into, he had some private financing initially to start to do all this work. You want to talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, this one was a good friend of mine, so it was kind of hard to take. When people mean well and they start checking the boxes and we're talking about things ahead of time for some major projects that he and his family had going, but at the same time, he was very confident in a certain area, so he didn't do a couple of the safety nets or backups that we typically suggest. So if there's a problem, well, it really was hard because he was mid project and he actually had the house broken into with things stolen and damage done. So he had to rework and wait for parts. And that got him to where it was a problem, but then lost his job. And so now you can't ask for more financing. He's got to get the project done. I mean, it was just a bad mix all around. And so it was just fine the way it was, but he just wasn't ready for any hurdles. And I mean, little hurdles. He had some expectations of, some delays or materials, but yeah, this one was tough. And it was about a year and a half that it took him to totally recover and get projects done and a new job and pay off credit cards. It was really, really rough. And it really put him and his family in a bind to where it stressed out, marriage and kids and just stuff that you don't want to see. We understand you can have troubles with a project, but you certainly don't want your home life to have that much of a challenge when we can put some safety nets in place just in case something that shouldn't happen does happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, it's that. I remember that story. I remember that happening in real time, and I just thought, oh my gosh, like everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for him, and that
Yeah.
sucked.
Well, and you never expect that. You expect a little bit, and maybe you get a lot of the list, but not all the list.
Right. Well, let's talk about some of the financing options, and I do think that this is not an all-inclusive list. I think you and I are constantly learning of new products that are out there from other banks and lenders that we've never heard of, especially if they've got some of their own capital that they're willing to use for products that they've come up with or whatever for people in those situations, especially in smaller towns. I think you find a lot of dilapidated homes that need a lot of repair, and if it's a local bank, they might have a special product they came up with just for the people in their area and in their membership to do something there. But some of the bigger ones
Great.
that most people are going to be familiar with or they may have seen online would be like the FHA 203K loans. We'll talk about a little bit more of these here in a second, but FHA has a version, VA has a version, Fannie Mae has their home style loan, which is again very similar. There are there's the limited version. There's also the full version of each of those. So you might be able to get out a limited amount versus getting out of, a full 200,000 to completely do a major remodel repair. You can use these as purchases. You can use them as refinances. You can use home equity lines of credit. Maybe you've already owned a house and you're using a line of credit against your current house to start repairing and fixing up another property, or maybe you've got some personal money saved up, or again, in Charlie's scenario, maybe you've got a private lender that's willing to give you some money to fix it up just so that they know they're going to get paid off at the end. Or maybe you do like a home improvement loan. Maybe the home is not as dilapidated as you might think in your mind first off. Maybe this is just a house you need to move in. It's got 7 of the 10 boxes checked and the kitchen's just really outdated. You need to fix up that kitchen. You can get a home improvement loan against the house and use that money to replace that kitchen. So there's a lot of different product types out there. There's a lot of options out there for people. But Charlie, how do you suggest people figure out what product option makes the most sense for them?
Yeah, and this is the one where Google searching honestly doesn't do anything justice. Because if you're asking a general question, you get certain answers back. And then you'll find friends or family that had, a rich uncle that helped, or, they had the unusual. So there's always those little niche items like you mentioned. But generically speaking, the best way to go through is get your stuff together. Let's put the hit list together so we can talk through it. And just even that conversation, we can see, oh, hey, we're going to go this way, or we're going to go this way. There's preferences, and then there's reality. So knowing what your situation is, trying to get it ahead of time so you are as clean and shiny as possible, so you're eligible for as many of the options as possible. Then you have the choice of picking. And when you find the project, sometimes it lines up with what you thought. Other times there's that surprise we talked about. But each of these are going to be slightly different, and I think that's one of the things we have the most fun with is this way looks the best, and your buddies did this, but that's a different situation. And so yours is actually over here. If you want to hire it all done, the answer is different than if you want to participate in the work. So letting us help you through and talk through the what ifs and then the maybes, and there's a lot of personal preference. That's my favorite part. If we do this ahead of time, you get lots of choices. We can figure out which one's the most cost effective. Maybe it's the fastest. You don't care about cost effective. You just need it fast or you're going to lose out on a deal. Or maybe it's one where you need to get in, but you're going to have a gap because you don't want to do something before an inheritance comes or after a baby's born. Everybody is just a little bit different on what they want, and we can help you decipher, hey, there's 10 options. Here's your top 3. Let's get the rest off the table unless something changes. But that conversation with us and making sure we can get you clean and ready and as shiny as possible saves you a lot of time, money, and headaches.
Yeah, and I even think of like fix and flip type loans that do exist out there, and we've got some outlets for such a thing. But those products are going to be different than if you're buying something that you're planning on living in for 30 years, or maybe you're buying something just to improve it and do whatever with it. There's just so many different things what the future is. It's not necessarily what just
Right.
right now is. It's what the future is for this house.
I love that. And I think when we hear what people have chosen, sometimes you get backed into a corner and you just have to take a certain thing. But we've had a lot of investors that they'll just take the easy route out. Well, hey, this person's going to give me money. Yeah, it's at 18% and there's these fees, but I don't care. If you know it and you're okay with it, that's fine. I would, honestly, if it were me, I'd prefer looking before I pull that trigger, because if I can get it at 9 or whatever the scenario, the more you save, the more profit you have. So everybody's got a different timeline, preference, ability, but jumping into something just because it's easy typically means expensive. And we're not looking to make it hard, but a little bit of effort to save a lot of money and give you more choices and less stress, all for it.
Yep. So some actionable takeaways. Obviously, number one is talk with your lender early, figuring out what financing options make sense, which ones are eligible for you. Maybe your credit score is going to cause you to kind of be backed into that corner, as Charlie was talking about, or maybe you're going to have a great credit score, and now it just comes down to picking which option makes the most sense. So a lot of that comes down to just having your conversation with your lender and figuring out your specific situation. Secondly, always get a home inspection and budget at least 10 to 20% more than what you're expecting for those renovations. So that home inspection, you might be used, just know that, hey, I know that this project is going to be this house is going to be a project, right? But still important to have a home inspection so you know how much of a project you're getting into, because the last thing you want is to find out that the basement walls are bowing in, that you didn't see it, and now you went from expecting to spend 100 to now 150 or 175, and that wasn't really what your intended budget was, or your plans, or your timeline, or anything. So that home inspection is still super important. And then finally, deciding which projects you can realistically do yourself versus what you might need professional help versus what you just don't want to do yourself. Some houses are really disgusting, and I don't personally want to go in and do those things. That might be you. So,
Preferences, and that's the cool part. There are so many choices, and the more you plan ahead, the more the choices come into play, which we all like choices, and we all like to typically save money and save stress. So Let's do it that way.
Perfect. Well, if you have any questions about your DIY projects or your renovations, give us a shout. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed the conversation today and found it valuable. Be sure to follow us
Cheers.
on social media platforms and subscribe to the podcast for more exciting episodes. Remember, stay curious. We'll see you next week on The Lofty Lender.